Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano, and today I'm talking about an independent animated series. Now, this is a show that has been on for a few years. I had heard about it before, but I had never really checked it out until fairly recently when rather bad news broke out about it. Main reason being is that I just didn't really have the strongest interest for it. I thought that it looked, just by the look of it, it's like, okay, this looks like something that might not be for me. I just felt like, okay, everything that everyone's saying about this feels like something that wouldn't be for me. So I just never bothered getting around to it until pretty much this news broke out, and it just got me curious, like, okay, what is this show about? And luckily, with it only being a few episodes, I was able to get caught up to pretty much where the show is at right now in the animated series, The Amazing Digital Circus. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. Why wasn't I interested in The Amazing Digital Circus? Again, a lot of the stuff that people said about it felt like it was like the kind of thing where I was like, okay, I've seen this kind of thing before. Don't really care for it, where people were pretty much comparing it to other things like the, I guess this wasn't really a short even, but the Cartoon Network Adult Swim thing, Pibby, where it was like, okay, here's, a bunch of cartoons being corrupted and it's all messed up. I heard people comparing it to pretty much like essentially like any video game or animation that you've heard of in recent years, where it's like, hey, what if we took this cute thing and made it messed up? And while I'm not against deconstruction of things, I have gotten kind of tired of seeing a lot of games or shows go with that angle, because I always feel like it's always wannabe edgelord nonsense, to put it simply. It just sounded like, okay, so this is going to be one of those, looks like a preschool show or whatever, but it's actually more adult, and yeah, it doesn't sound all that interesting. I don't know. It just did not sound very appealing to me. But then again, I had never seen it, so I was just like, okay, I know this thing is popular. It just doesn't sound like it's a thing that I'll enjoy. And while I did think that the designs of the characters were pretty cool and, pretty cute and, nice to look at, I was just like, I no one's really sold me on this show. Nothing about it sounds like my thing. I've heard some people describe it like My Little Pony, which is like, look, that's not even a good description, because I do not like My Little Pony. Sorry for all the bronies out there. It's not my thing. I just had no real interest in going into it until fairly recently. What had happened was that the show's creator, who, goes by Gooseworks, essentially went on Reddit or somewhere, I believe it's Reddit, talking about the show, and basically established, like, hey, these are the main characters of the show, the characters Pomni and Jax, and fans apparently didn't like that. Now, to me, after having watched the show, that's incredibly silly to me, but, let's keep it at that. Like, so I heard that people got mad because she had established that these were the main characters we were to focus on for the show. Apparently, it's already towards the end of the show. I could be wrong on that, but everything I've read seems to suggest that we have like 1 or 2 episodes left to basically watch. The backlash for this statement was so bad that she basically went out of her way to say, I just don't feel like I want to continue the show. I feel like I don't want to touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. Basically, it's, further suggesting, like, look, the outrage was so bad, she just does not want to get involved with the show anymore, which is understandable. If your fandom gets that crazy, I really can't blame you if you decide, like, you just don't want to deal with it anymore. So, of course, with that going on, I was just like, okay, maybe it's time for me to finally check out an episode of the show to see what has people so crazy that they have to respond to the creator in this. Well, I guess the word would be passionate, but I honestly would not say that about this. This is just ruthless harassment. So finally, I sat down, decided to watch the first episode, and what I found was, it was interesting, but I didn't really see the hype, and I was automatically like, okay, let me talk to some people who have watched the show and just ask, like, does it get any better than the first episode? Like, is the first episode not the peak of the show? Because of course, with a lot of shows, the first episode isn't. But then again, we live in a time where I feel like a lot of shows try to put everything into the first episode now, just because a lot of shows are not allowed to go past the one season. A lot of shows just do not get past the first season, and it feels like a lot of people just try to rush everything in that first episode. So, what you get is what you essentially get for the whole show. So I was just kind of curious, like, okay, does it get better from here? Like, is this really the best representation of the show? And the answer was yes, it gets better after the first episode of the show. I basically went off of that, like, okay, let me continue on. And, the first couple of episodes, I was like, okay, let me watch them, do them one by one. I wasn't watching them right away. But by the time we had hit, I want to say episode 4, that's where I was like, okay, now I'm watching this, like, I'm pretty much binging the show till I get to what is now the final episode of the show, episode 7. Of course, there are going to be a few more episodes, but this is the final episode so far since I started watching it. I'm probably wording that badly, whatever. Point being is that I did find that the show got better as it went along. But going back to that first episode, because I decided after finishing watching the final episode released so far, to go back to the start and just be like, okay, let me see if now having broader context for the whole thing, having more experience with it, how do I feel about it going back to that first episode? And I did enjoy it a little bit more. I still think that it's probably the weakest episode of the whole show, but it is pretty much a pretty good way to get you into the show. And I will say that it really isn't what I thought it was going to be. And that's, to me, the most important part, because it's really not dark, twisted version of a kid's show. It's definitely a show that is aimed more at adults, but kids can still watch it. They do censor out most of the language, and even when they don't, I don't feel like it really goes all that overboard. Like, you're pretty much watching something along the lines of, like, The Simpsons. Not necessarily that, but, something in that tone where it's like, okay, it's definitely more for adults, but a kid can watch and enjoy it. And I do applaud a lot of it, because for what's essentially an indie show, it does have great CG animation. I would honestly argue it has better CG animation than a lot of, I don't know if they were necessarily bigger budget, but like actual studio CG shows that you'd find on TV. Like, they look better than anything Nickelodeon ever produced on their CG side, for example. And for the most part, I will say that the premise itself, while it is pretty dark and messed up, it never feels like it's trying too hard. Like, it's trying to be like this edgy take on whatever kids show you can think of. Like, it doesn't feel like it's trying to be twisted or anything like that. It's just like, look, this is just a messed up situation that these people are in, and that is the premise of the show. To sum up the show, it's basically, okay, here's a group of people, actual people who have been transported into this CG world known as the Amazing Digital Circus, run by essentially an AI ringleader named Kane, who's basically, he looks like a typical ringleader, except he has teeth as a head and eyeballs within the teeth. But beyond that, it's pretty much like, okay, here's this Raggedy Ann looking character who, is a real woman. She's one of the older ones. She's pretty much kind and always trying to be kind to everyone. You got the main character, Pomni, who essentially is like, like the newest person to have arrived. She's the jester. You got basically all these different kinds of characters. The other main character of the show being Jax, essentially the youngest member of the group, even though he's been there longer than most of them, it seems. He's basically this tall purple rabbit. He is cruel. He's an asshole. He doesn't care about anything, except maybe he does, and that's kind of where the show is going. And this is really a show about characters, how they interact with each other, and essentially them trying to be a community in their odd little situation. Because pretty much the whole reason why they're there is that they're pretty much being put through endless adventures with this by the Kane character, who essentially is like, okay, every day he's got some new adventure for them, cooked up, where they have to do some kind of quest or some kind of role play scenario. Basically, it's an excuse to have different plot lines with them. And again, for me, it would kind of really impress me, because at first I thought it was really just going to be just, oh, let's do like the kid show thing. Like, hey, look, it's going to be like a circus show with dark hints at something messed up. But no, that's not the show. It's very much a character-driven show. It's got its comedy. It's got the nice animation, like I said before. And it's really just about these people and how they deal with being in this situation. To a point that, while I do think the show is pretty funny, as it went along, I actually found myself more intrigued by the emotion, the characters, and just the overall story going around them. Like, for me, even though this is definitely a comedy show, it really is a show that should be watched just for the characterization. I will say one of the funniest things I noticed while watching the show is that it had references to an old animated film that a lot of people have probably never seen, just because it's not widely available. You could probably find it on YouTube, but it's not been released like on a physical, or I don't think any streaming service. It's called Raggedy Ann and Andy's Musical Adventure. And right away I kind of was like, okay, there's got to be some love for this movie in this show, because, one of the main characters in it is, like I said, a character named Ragatha, who is basically like this Raggedy Ann-like character. And that's one thing. I mean, Raggedy Ann is, of course, an iconic toy. I mean, a lot of people, are already aware of the fact that they even made a whole horror franchise based on, well, not the doll, but a thing that the doll was actually in the real world. Yeah, look up Annabelle, real world Annabelle. It's Raggedy Ann. But even beyond that, within the second episode of the show, there's the introduction of this Goop character. He only really appears in this episode, but it pops up, and I was automatically like, this thing is oddly like the Gloop character, or whatever it was called, from the Raggedy Ann and Andy movie. It moves and talks like it. This has got to be a reference. And when I looked it up, it's like, okay, not only is it a reference, but apparently the movie is something that inspired a lot of this show. So yeah, not really surprised. Quick summary for you guys who have never seen that or even heard of it. Not a very good movie, but it is very interesting to watch because it's very well animated and it's a very weird movie. But still, not a great one. Still worth watching, though. Anyways, yeah, so that to me already stood out and already got on my good side because it's like, hey, you're referencing something that a lot of people have never seen. I always love when people take advantage of, like, hey, let me throw in stuff that people might not have ever experienced, because it always leads to people exploring more things than they probably otherwise wouldn't. And not to say that that has made the Raggedy Ann and Andy movie popular, but it is nice to think like, hey, look, some random fan of the Amazing Digital Circus might watch Raggedy Ann and Andy, a musical adventure, just because of that reference. That to me is always awesome. But even beyond that, it's just, the show does have a lot of fun with whatever storylines they do. Like, they follow up with a horror mansion kind of storyline. They eventually do one where it's like, hey, look, what if the characters were at a McDonald's? A whole list of other adventures that they do, and it's all just really fun and creative, and just really highlights the strength of the show, which is the characters themselves. Not to say that it isn't funny, like if anyone is thinking that that's what I'm saying, based on, me saying that it's better as a character show than it is as a comedy show. But I do think that anyone who might be suffering from their own depression or might be feeling weird about themselves could potentially watch the show and find some comfort in the way the characters are presented and just their own struggles. Like, you have one of the characters named Zubul, who is often trying to avoid going on these adventures, and her whole thing is that she can change parts of her body, and there's obviously a metaphor there about just like, her constantly changing her body. I just feel like there's probably going to be viewers who watch this and may find something about themselves through seeing that kind of a character acknowledged and established in the show, who is just like, okay, are they happy with how they are, or do they like changing their body's overall image? For favorite episode, I do have to go with episode 6, which is the one where they have guns. It's just fun to see, like, okay, they're just running around, shooting up each other, and just seeing, like, the different roles, and just seeing how they handle the different situations, seeing the pairings. And it's one of those episodes where it's like, it's got a lot of great humor, but it also is where it really digs deep into who these characters are, just by how they interact with each other. The whole scene where Ragatha essentially comes clean about how she feels, about why she is the way she is, and how she fears that being the way she is going to push people away. It's really touching stuff. And of course, it has one of the strongest scenes of the whole show, where the character of Jax, who, is teamed up with Pomni. Again, for those of you who were wondering why the creator would say that these two are the main characters, this is a big moment. Why? Essentially goes off on her and basically pushes her away the second it becomes clear that he's getting close to her. And you'd think that it would just be like typical kids show, or even sometimes generic adult Hollywood drama, where it's like, oh, I'm just gonna push this person away, but really it's clear that I want them. It goes really hard on it, to a point where it's like, this character says some of the most despicable things that you could imagine in a show like this. And it's just really heavy on that. I get why some people might not like this character, and I get why some people feel like, oh, we don't want this character to be the main character because they're kind of a dipshit. But it's like, I mean, everything going on in the show, it's pretty clear what is going on here. You have Pomni, who is new to this place, but is also kind of like the most well-functioning of the group, just because she is fairly new to this place, against Jax, who's like the least well-functioning person, despite how crazy some of the other characters are, because he's already at a point where he just does not care about anyone else. He's basically a nihilist. So seeing those, opposites, and seeing how they eventually will come together, and whether or not one of them goes, crazy or whatever, who knows, it is what makes it all that interesting. I didn't really go into this earlier, but essentially in the show it is established that there's been other humans that have been here before, but past humans have normally gotten corrupted. They basically over time get so crazy that they become just like this digital mess. They just become unrecognizable from who they were. I get the feeling that the show is going to end off with one of these characters going through that, and possibly getting fixed by the end. I would not rule out the possibility that they will get fixed, because I do feel like the happy ending of this show will be that some of these characters that have been corrupted in this way will return and will be brought back to their sane personalities. But who knows? All I know is that the most recent episode, which has them essentially trying to escape the digital circus, is one of the better episodes of the show. It definitely doesn't hit as hard as the gun episode, but I will say that it is one of those like, okay, yeah, this is why, one, the show has to end now, and two, just a masterclass of how good this show is written. Like, it pretty much just has like, okay, we're gonna cut through the BS. We're actually gonna start moving towards a sort of finale by having the characters not only trying to leave, but essentially find out things and come to the conclusion of certain things that has been building up to this point, like Jax realizing that Kane is lying about what he can and can't do. That I thought was pretty amazing. I don't know what's going to happen from here on out. I hope that despite the entire situation that went down, Gooseworks does deliver a beautiful ending. But if she decides to come up with something awful, just as way to spite fans who ruined the solo experience for her. I could not blame her, so and that it will still be interesting. But as a piece of art so far, I think that this is a really good show. I've always preferred shows be shorter than longer, so I really don't mind that the show will likely not come back for more seasons, because it really does not have to. As long as they tell the story and have the characters go through the experiences that they need to, I'll be more satisfied than having it go on for 5 seasons and having these same experiences, these same lessons, all dragged out over those 5 seasons. Even though I do acknowledge that it is kind of lame how a lot of modern TV doesn't just do random episodes about random shit. Obviously, I want that, but it's not going to be for everything. So I'm perfectly fine with how this show is going. Someday I might do specific episodes as their own videos, but for now, I just want to say I do like this show. I do like where it's going. I like the way the characters are presented. The humor is fine, but the highlight for me will be the characters and how they progress. With all that away, I just want to say thank you for listening, and I'll see you again next time.
Ah! Oh! Gangle, you startled me.
Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like, and comment. Ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/psychams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.